Have you ever just craved total, absolute silence? I mean, in the world we live in, it feels like the biggest luxury, right? But there's this incredible internet horror story, a perfect piece of modern folklore that asks a really terrifying question. What if pure silence isn't empty at all? What if it's actually full of something else? So today, we're going to dive into that story, break it down, and explore the real science and the deep-seated fears behind the quietest place on Earth. So right from the jump, the story hits you with this idea, and it just completely flips everything you think you know on its head. It argues that silence isn't this gentle, peaceful void. No, it's an aggressive, almost crushing force. It doesn't just empty a room. It lets you finally hear what was hiding there the whole time. And the scariest part, you can't escape what you hear. The story revolves around our main character, let's call him David, who's in a really, really bad spot. I mean, he is buried under a mountain of debt. And like the story says, desperate people see opportunities where others see warnings. And that, right there, is the perfect setup for a character who is about to make a very, very bad decision. And that bad decision comes knocking, in the form of an online ad from the super mysterious research firm called Aethelgard Acoustics. They're on the hunt for a volunteer for an endurance study. The offer they make is one of those things that just sounds way too good to be true, you know? It's a lifeline for a guy like David. $1 million. I mean, that's a life-changing amount of money, and all he has to do is endure. It's a classic deal with the devil setup, right? Trading a little bit of his time, and, as we're about to find out, his sanity, for total financial freedom. And for how long? Just 100 hours. That's a little over 4 days. In the story, David's thinking, this is easy money, I'll just sleep through most of it. And that initial confidence, that hubris, is so important. It's what makes his eventual downfall so much more terrifying. He was, as the narrator tells us, so wrong. So the whole experiment takes place here, in Anechoic Chamber. And these are real places. They are literally the quietest rooms on the entire planet, engineered with these foam wedges that just swallow sound waves whole. If you clapped your hands in there, the sound would just vanish. No echo. It's a profoundly unnatural feeling. When David shows up, he's greeted by this cold, kind of creepy guy, Dr. Eris, who drops this cryptic warning on him. Now, at this point in the story, it just sounds like some weird philosophical line. But trust me, it's a massive piece of foreshadowing that explains everything that's about to happen. The rules look simple enough, right? No distractions, just you and your thoughts. And there's an emergency button if you need it. But then he gets the contract. And of course, totally focused on the $1 million, David barely even looks at paragraph 14, which has this chilling warning. He just brushes it off, a classic horror movie move that basically seals his fate. That heavy door seals shut, and the story describes it as feeling like the entire world just ended. The lack of sound is like a physical weight. And after what starts as a pretty blissful period of rest, the true nature of this chamber starts to kick in. I love how this story handles this shift. David sleeps for like 10 or 12 hours, just soaking in the deep, profound peace. But when he wakes up, that novelty is gone. The quiet isn't a comfort anymore. Now it feels watchful. And this is where the real experiment begins. And this is where the story gets so cool, because it weaves in actual science. It's something called the Orfield Effect, and it describes what happens in extreme quiet. With zero external sound to process, your ears go into overdrive. They become incredibly sensitive, and they turn their focus inward, amplifying every little noise your own body makes. The very first sound David hears is this faint, rhythmic swooshing. At first, he thinks maybe it's the ventilation system. But then, he makes this horrifying discovery. It's the sound of his own blood rushing through the arteries in his neck. And then comes this. A deep, powerful beat that feels like it's filling the entire room. It's his own heartbeat, but it's not some gentle pulse in his chest anymore. In the absolute, crushing quiet, it's a deafening drum that he cannot get away from. Pretty soon, he's trapped in a concert of his own biology. He can literally hear his eyelids scraping shut, the gurgling of his digestive system. He even tries to hum, to make his own noise to drown it out. But the anechoic chamber just eats the sound, leaving this flat, dead note in the emptiness. Okay, so this is the major turning point. The whole ordeal shifts from being this deeply uncomfortable physical thing to a full-blown assault on his sanity. As the story puts it, he was losing. badly. So 2 days in, David is just exhausted and completely frayed. His own body has turned into this inescapable noise machine that's literally keeping him from sleeping. And in this incredibly vulnerable state, something new enters the picture. A faint whisper. At first, he thinks, okay, here we go. The hallucination the contract warned me about. He's trying to rationalize it, telling himself it's just his brain filling the silent void. But then, the sound forms a clear, distinct word. He freezes, and he calls out into that suffocating, sound-absorbing darkness, and his own voice just dies the second it leaves his lips. And the voice whispers back, but here's the genius of the story, the twist that makes this so much more than just psychological horror. The voice doesn't come from inside his head. It comes from the far corner of the room. It's external. He presses his ear against the wall and hears slow, steady breathing, and it isn't his. He was never alone. The horror of that just hits him like a truck. He starts desperately talking to the wall, asking if this is all part of the test. And the voice replies, clear as day, there is no test, David. The thing knows his name. And when David asks what that even means, it delivers this line. And just like that, the entire reason for the experiment is flipped upside down. This was never about human endurance. It was about something way, way more sinister. And in that exact moment, the story brilliantly calls back to paragraph 14, psychological displacement. It wasn't a warning about a possible side effect. It was the goal of the experiment. The room wasn't built to keep sound out. It was built to keep something in. And David was the vessel it was being transferred into. He completely loses it. He scrambles for the panic button and just slams it over and over, but nothing happens. The escape route was just an illusion. And then a laugh echoes from the corner. But it's not a monster's laugh. It's a perfect imitation of his own. The transfer is complete. The story then jumps forward to the aftermath. David wakes up in a hospital room. Dr. Aris is there, smiling, handing him a check for $1 million. The reason the panic button didn't work? Oh, just a technical glitch. He takes the money. He tries to go back to his life. But the story leaves us with this final, absolutely haunting question. The narrator talks about still hearing David screaming back in that room, and it forces you to question everything. Who is telling this story? Is it David forever traumatized by what happened? Or is it the thing that was waiting in the silence, now wearing his face and walking around in his shoes? A perfect, chilling end to a modern horror masterpiece.